When did you realize your friends were actually fake friends? 2 separate occasions. 1. I wasn't popular in school at all. I had a reputation for being a freak with an attitude problem, but I performed well in academics and sports and was often seeing the same people within that high-performing group. I got relatively close to the girls I did sports with since we spent so much time together at practice and at meets. We even had lunch together sometimes. But when it came to anything social, I was never invited. They went to parties every weekend, they even threw the parties, and didn't ever invite me. Sometimes they had the excuse of, oh, there was just too many people, but most of the time they didn't bother explaining why I wasn't included, even though we spent a lot of them with the same people. I ran into some of the girls I was closest with a year after graduation and they acted like they barely knew me when they said hi. 2. This one hurt way worse. I was the only one from my real friend group that finished college. During the time where I was away and each of them was understandably struggling to figure out what to do next, we obviously struggled not to grow apart. It wasn't that bad until they started dating these guys from our backwater hometown. I tried to be happy for them, but these guys were low-key racist and sexist. I'm black. After a particularly bad night, I made my feelings about them known because my feelings were hurt, and honestly I thought my friends deserved better. After that, they barely answered my messages, stopped including me in their plans, and actively made up stories when I tried to make the plans first. We used to hang out every day when we weren't at school or at work, so this behavior didn't go unnoticed to me. Then, my dad got really sick and spent the entire summer I was home in the hospital. I was really stressed and struggling, and they knew, and barely reached out. That's when I knew despite everything we had gone through they were fake friends. We had a fight and I never spoke to any of them again. My only consolation to this day is that they stayed in that crappy town for those guys. They had plans about moving down south and doing other stuff and never fulfilled any of them, and I have done all the things I said I was going to do. However, I don't consider it much of a consolation because despite how they treated me, I didn't want them to live crappy lives. But oh well. Not so much fake, but turns out I wasn't as good a friend as I thought. My best friend of 20 years got married, and while I was invited to the wedding, I wasn't in the wedding party, though a number of other friends were. Was asked a number of times by fellow guests at the reception why I wasn't in the party, and had to brush it off with, oh, she knew I was really busy. Never asked her why, just kind of left it alone because I'm not quite ready to be told flat out that while she's my best friend, I'm not even a close one of hers. I suppose I should have known. I'm always the one to initiate contact, and she sometimes doesn't even respond, but I kept chalking it up to her being busy and a bit of a ditz because when we did get together, we both seemed to have a really good time. Birds are nuts and super underestimated. Sounds like your little guy was a handful. So it was our final year at school, few weeks after the pandemic started. One of my friends wrote to me something like, "Oh my god, I miss you and the other our friends so much. I wish we could meet somewhere and drink some beer." I replied that I also missed him and was also willing to hang out. But when the friend that wrote me threw a barbecue literally a week later, he invited his social circle and the friend he mentioned in the message, but not me. It was a year and a half ago, but to this day I don't understand what was the point of his message if he didn't intend to invite me. P.S. Sorry for my English. I think what often happens is that there is one, or more, person in the group who doesn't like you much and the others somewhat prefer them over you. So, you get edged out. I've occasionally been told that there is some sort of rift, which basically means they've chosen between you, and chosen the other person. When my spouse died and I was still sad and grieving at 3 months, I lost a couple friends. Including one I'd been best friends with for 20 years. A few friends have been with me through it all, including podding up with during COVID. I really learned what friendship means. When I was 16 at a party, I got really drunk and my friends let another friend rape me while I was unconscious, and then laughed about it the next morning when they told me. It was horrifying and extremely disconcerting, but I'm a guy, and guys can't get raped. Get over it. I had a severe cutting problem and my best friend handed me a Tupperware filled with rusty razor blades. Happy to report that I kicked her out of my life and haven't cut for 4.5 years. When I joined their Discord server and saw everything they said about me behind my back. When a couple of my closest friends stopped talking to me when I got divorced from my husband. I finally stood up for myself in a loveless marriage where I did all the work and handled all responsibilities around the house and kids, and later he even admitted to avoiding the house because it was too stressful. The tipping point being when he stopped doing his duties at work for 6 months and got a warning. Then he still didn't shape up and got fired 6 more months after that. I didn't know any of this was going on until he was fired. Then proceeded to lie to me for the next 6 months about working on new certifications for his industry, and I found out he was just dicking around online. I lost any remaining love and respect for him after that. Oh, and I found out he made out with a co-worker at an office trip to Vegas but stopped himself when she invited him into her hotel room while they groped each other in the hallway. My one friend still isn't speaking to me because she thinks I should have stayed for the kids and to help my husband through his life crisis. The other friend and I are barely friends now, and she still says stuff like none of us knew how unhappy you were, and oh well, that's the difference about us. I don't mind reminding my husband here and there. They know everything now but still act like I'm the crazy person. I feel like all those years of supporting them, when I finally needed it in return, they completely let me down. I didn't have my girlfriends to help me through my divorce. I felt alone and betrayed. Finally in a better place with my new fiancé, but that still hurts me to my core finding out my friends weren't really my friends. I called them sisters. I wouldn't say I had fake friends, but instead I was the extra or periphery friend, and so once I felt things get awkward I move on and find new friends, but I've always been the periphery friend, so I don't pay much attention to friendship nowadays. Big sad, but life goes on. When I realized that the second one person wasn't there with us for the night or for whatever we were doing, they would be the hot topic of discussion. For no reason too. Just mindless shit talking simply because they weren't there to defend themselves. Then I realized they probably do the same when I'm not there. I don't need people like that in my life, so I stopped hanging out with them a couple months back. Smile. When the ROI is low, then it's a clear sign they were not your real friends. The lockdown taught me who cared and who was just in it for what they could get out of me. Return on investment equals ROI. With